Welcome to the fourth in our series of video time capsules commemorating the 75th anniversary of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. I'm Larry Lynch, University Archivist at UW-EC. It's Tuesday, May 12, 1992. We're going to talk about the past, present, and future of the university in addressing the theme of the 75th observance, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'd like to introduce our panelists. On the left is Chris Patton. Chris is a student. She's originally from Germany, but has been in the United States about 30 years. She ran a restaurant for several years with her husband in Eau Claire. And at about 1978, she and her family bought a dairy farm between Stanley and Thorpe and continued to run the restaurant and tried to operate a dairy farm at the same time. She studied painting, has done quite a bit of community work, and she is a tutor in the Academic Skills Center. She's also a member of the University Ambassadors and is in peer counseling. To Chris's left is Dr. Susan R. McIntyre. Sue is an assistant professor in the Curriculum and Instruction Department. She's been at UW-EC for 2 years. She's particularly interested in the use of technology in teaching, has been supervising student teachers using an email network, electronic mail network. She's also presented at 2 national conferences on the use of technology in teaching, and in particular use of email. She is on several organizations relating to reading and has published on reading, study skills, and use of technology in teaching. To her left is Scott Robertson. Scott is the chair of the art department and an associate professor. He is a painter, is interested in landscape, is also very interested in canoeing and running, and reports that he is active in all the needy organizations of the community. To Scott's left is Dr. Ronald N. Satz. Ron is Dean of Graduate Studies and the Director of University Research at University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. He teaches American Indian history. He is the recent author of a book that's the definitive book on Chippewa Treaty rights, and has several other publications on American Indians to his credit. He was on the Commission on Racism of the Lakota Community College in Sawyer County, and is on the advisory committee to the Department of Public Instruction of Wisconsin on American Indians. Welcome to this panel discussion.
Thanks, Larry.
I would like to keep this as informal as possible, and we have come up with a series of topics for discussion, but I don't intend to stick to that in any formal way. But I would like to start the discussion by having you characterize how you feel the culture is at this university, which is to say what it feels like to be on this campus. And we can look at it from the point of view of students and from, in your case, a non-traditional student, and from the point of view of faculty and staff. Chris, would you like to start with that?
I entered the university 1987, and that has been the best step in my life so far. It had been a lifelong wish for me to go to the university, and my daughter, as soon as the youngest left, we two became freshmen here together. And I have found this the most positive experience. All I had was a desire to come. And I was never meant to feel that I was inappropriate approaching anything, because I didn't know the etiquette very much. I went on intuition and feeling. And wherever I went, the doors were wide open, and people were welcoming me for wanting knowledge, and they took me seriously. And they helped me, they opened doors for me. And my mentor, Dr. Quinn, was very responsible. But I also found that the professors had opened doors, and I found that when I went to registration or other offices, there was a human element in there. I felt I really was welcome. They wanted to help me. I counted. And before long, people knew my name, and that really made me feel very welcome. And I never felt out of sync with the youth here, because I got involved, and before I ever realized, you know, I was in on it, and I have good friends in all age groups, male and female, student and faculty. So this has been a very good
Do you think that
step for me.
Other students welcome non-traditional students to this campus?
Not all, no. Definitely not. But I think when you get into the upper classes, they are more comfortable with non-traditional students. The toughest time was 110 English, because freshmen. And that was even for me difficult.
What
to
sort of
bridge
things
that
would happen? That would,
the group work.
Oh.
It was so difficult that I asked for time out, and I studied out of class, because I have so much energy, since I have several jobs on the outside campus, and I wanted to direct most of my energy towards my studies, so I couldn't have anything like that in class. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Betts was accommodating and let me study on the outside. So I made it.
So how do you feel? Now, you're a fairly recent arrival, about the same amount of time that I've been here. Scott, I think you as well. How do you feel that you were welcomed here, and what has been your observation as the strengths and weaknesses of this campus?
Sure. This is the fourth college campus I've been on the last 15 years. I've taught at University of New Hampshire, Indiana University, University of Malaysia, and then this is my fourth campus. And of all those campuses, I always look to students, because I'm a teacher first. And the students here at UW-Eau are the strongest students that I have ever had the pleasure to work with. That has its own pluses and minuses. These students read when you tell them to read. They do their homework, which means I have to grade it, you know. It's a very busy place, and that's a strength and a minus as well. A colleague this morning and I were talking, and he said that there's a rumor going around at one of the local schools that Eau Claire hires overachievers and lets peer pressure do the rest. And I think that's a pretty apt description. I'm guilty on both counts, probably. The culture here is it's Wisconsin. I think that if we were going to fix that, we'd have to pick up UW-Eau and put it someplace else in the country. And as a single woman in this community, that's problematic as well. This is a very coupled place, and that's not a university problem. My dean keeps asking, you know, what he can do to make this place a better place for me. Well, he can get me a date, you know, but that's not his job, and that's a problem more of the community than it is of the university community. So Eau Claire has been a very warm place. There's not a single solitary thing that I haven't wanted to do here as a faculty person that I haven't received some support for doing. I've been very, very fortunate in that. I left my last campus because there wasn't a lot of money to do things like travel and start innovative ideas, and I felt very supported in that. And the students have been wonderfully supportive and have been real friendly. But the weakness is the community, but it's also the strength. One more note on that. I was raised in New England, where everyone is warm and all, and once you're in. And here I note that everybody's warm and friendly, but it's a more of a surface thing. It's not a real deep thing. And then so I've asked the question, how long do you have to be here before you're in? And the answer is somewhere between 10 to 15 years. And I don't have that kind of patience. So,
okay.
Thanks.
Scott.
I would say, listening to Sue's explanation, I think we came the same year, I think, and I would agree. I came from Milwaukee with a very different kind of student population at Cardinal Stritch College, very diverse, everything from upper middle class students to black and Hispanic students from Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee. I was first very impressed with the quality of the students here. Teaching honors courses and then regular courses in the curriculum, finding there really weren't that much difference between the two groups of students, I found, in terms of achieving and the quality of some of their work. But one of the experiences here that I've really enjoyed has been the support and in particular the organization of the university, which I think is very strong. It was very easy for me to find who I needed to talk to and what I needed to do to get certain types of problems resolved. And that was something that I found at other universities. It just simply becomes a tremendous headache, and with a lot of log jams trying to get problems resolved. And at the university here, I find the openness in administration and within also certain student groups, and very easy to find access to. And that's something that's helped me a lot get accustomed to it. I also agree, I think it's difficult coming to the university that it takes a while to get accepted. If there's one thing that I found about Eau Claire, I used to kind of joke when I first came here to friends of mine who would call, and I'd say, well, I just don't understand. Everybody here has been here 25 years. You know, it's like my whole department, everybody's been there 25 years. They all came in the 60s. And the interesting attitude is they're very suspicious of people who have agendas, because they think, well, they're going to be here 3 years, then they're leaving. So there's really this sense of family, like a neighborhood. And if you come in and you've got ideas that you want to implement, there's a little suspicion there. It's like, you're not going to be here for 25 years. You got to make that kind of long-term commitment before some kind of integrity gets developing behind some of your initiatives. That hasn't been a big problem for me, but I see that as one when I came in because of the length that many of the faculty have been here. They've never had experience anywhere else. The students, on the other hand, I think can benefit from that kinds of experience, because they have, in our department, I think there's a nice mixture of various kind of outlooks towards the arts. And so it's been a great advantage. Students have that outlook of the senior faculty member and the newer faculty member to kind of work with. And so there's some continuity there in the way that the faculty conduct their classes. If there's a concern, I would say the concern is more a diversity in ideas, and maybe it's not a problem so much of a diversity of ideas as it is a format for exchange of those ideas. And students that I've talked to seem very interested in a wide range of different attitudes and approaches. And the university, in a way, is a very comfortable, kind of safe environment. And I think it's our responsibility to really challenge them with a wide range of ways of looking at the world.
Ron, it's been said on several of the panels that we've already had that this is a very conservative campus. The students are conservative, the faculty are conservative. And I wonder if you think that that's really true.
I'm going to answer your question in a roundabout way by responding to two comments that I just heard. And that is, how long does a person have to be here? I came here in 1983. I'm not yet been here 10 years. I was talking to a couple of colleagues the other day, where a bunch of us were in a meeting, and they said, well, ask Ron. He's one of the newer folks around. And I said, that's right. And I came here in '83. I am, however, in terms of longevity, the second oldest among the deans in terms of tenure here, Pat Osmo being here, I think, 2 or 3 years longer than I have been. So I kind of feel as both a youngster and an oldster, if I can use that expression, an old-timer. But I too would agree with the comment that this is one of those places that there are folks who have been here a long, long time, and there is a real deep sense of tradition. And one does have a feeling. I came here from University of Tennessee system, and people talk about Southern hospitality, and people talk about Midwestern hospitality, and although I have not really had what I would call a difficult time in terms of meeting people and this type of thing, there is something about the climate of Eau Claire. I don't think it's really that people are not open to new ideas, but I think it's everyone kind of goes off in their own way. I think to an extent the architecture of the campus, the way the campus is designed, and the way buildings are set up, and lends itself to not promoting that interdisciplinary kind of a mix of getting folks together. And And one of the negatives that I see is that, and I don't know if it's a conservative kind of a thing, but what you're talking about, I sense, and I've been here since 1983, and so I think I know what you're saying. On the other hand, I would say that, and this would, I think, is a strength, and it seconds something that I think Sue mentioned. This is a campus of hardworking folks, hardworking faculty and hardworking students. My comment is, several years ago we had a team of researchers looking at education come here to investigate and make comments, and I was quoted, and it actually ended up in the book, and I said the Protestant work ethic is alive and well at UW-Eau Claire, both among the students and the faculty. Students work hard, they play hard. Faculty work hard, administrators work hard. This is a hardworking campus. I have been involved in universities in Illinois, Maryland, Tennessee, and now in Wisconsin in my career, and I think it is truer of this place than any other place I've ever been. A very, very hard, dedicated, working faculty and students who are much the same, which means that the need to have that extra outlet, that social outlet that Sue was alluding to, these kinds of things become very important. And yet, for whatever reason, that seems to be one of the shortcomings of the campus. And as an administrator, and also as a faculty member, I think it's one of the things the university needs to look to in the future is ways of breaking down some of these barriers that would allow faculty to mix more across the campus, to have opportunities to do this more across the campus. And I think that's one of the weaknesses that we have. The strength on the other side of it is that we're so busy, most of us, we don't have time to miss it. But we need to miss it. We need to have that extra outlet. It's important that we have that additional dimension. So I think it's a concern that we need to be look into.
Scott, do you feel removed on the other side of the river from the action on this side much?
I'd have to confess to one of Ron's statements. I've probably been so busy. I would just as soon be isolated to some extent to kind of resolve the problems. And I think that's, frankly, the base of the difficulties. I've been here the first year. I was acutely aware of it, and then you become so. You begin to recognize people's patterns, and people do work really hard after they go. They've got people at home they have to go to. They've established friends that have been involved in social circles for 20, 25 years. That's a cycle that's very comfortable and one that I can identify with, and it is kind of difficult. The isolation of the campus, I think part of it is because Eau Claire also its size. It's not really a big school, but it's not a small campus either. Mm-hmm. And so there tends to be a lot of division even within departments, let alone the university as a whole. So I think that's a difficult problem. Certainly it's aggravated by the river and the bridge, and noticing as that other part of the campus. The students identify the university here on two basic features: the hill and the river, and the walk. And those are two things that the campus did when they designed it that unintentionally separated students away from the main part of the campus and the main part of the campus away from the Fine Arts Center.
Of course, we all know the bridge builds character, so that's an important aspect of what we're doing here at the university, particularly in the winter. It builds a great deal of character.
I wonder if Sue and Chris, if you could address the question of sexism and racism, and Ron too, we might have something to say about this, with what we've seen in Los Angeles recently, and with what I hear from my son in his own school, and what I see on Nintendo video games. Are we running backward rather than forward? Have we made any progress in the last 30 years on respecting differences, as the buttons say, and all the rest? And there have been several movements since the 60s and 70s that supposedly had achieved some sort of awareness. But I'm not sure that my son is getting the message, and we certainly try at home. And I certainly don't. I think television has gone totally backward, at least a lot of it. Do you have any sense of this, either on this campus or just generally? Chris?
What I liked was, first of all, the button, the difference. Professor Smoot said, and I like that, being in psych, he said, the button is well, but we need to think of the difference in people, not just the difference. We need to accept the people who have the difference, and because we share the common humanity. What I think this campus really did good is the interaction with our Indian people, because I think American history is lacking if we don't address and look at the history before us, and that is the American Indian history, and we can learn so much from them. And I was intensely grateful for the last event the ethnic office staged, and that was the powwow, the teaching powwow. That was so beautiful, and I never thought, basically I'm a shy person, so I always have to make myself do things, and I said to my daughter, no, I'm not going to dance in this. And I danced. There was a sense of community. It really was. The barriers broke down. We were celebrating people, each other, and it did not matter at all, the color. And that was one of my highlights here in 4 years, that evening. Really was good in that sense, what you asked me.
I was at that powwow also.
Were
I felt
you?
the same way.
Did
I
you?
didn't get out and dance, though.
You didn't?
No, I should have. I wasn't at the demonstration. I was at the real one. I should have gone to the demonstration, I think.
Yeah, see, that was really great.
Sue, what do you think?
There's a real lack of color on this campus that disturbs me, because I think direct experience is the best model we can have.
Right.
As a teacher educator, I have a real hard time providing direct experience for my students in terms of dealing with racial differences. I think that we have some initiatives on campus. We have some people that are concerned. I think respect differences has been translated into tolerate differences on this campus, and our students and some of our faculty haven't really learned what respect means. I think that we have a low percentage of colored students and faculty on campus, and that's part of being where we are in the world in Wisconsin. Additionally, there's genderism on this campus. It's not just with faculty, it's also with students, and a lot of that has to do with higher ed. Higher ed is a masculine kind of place. But additionally, we're in a place in the world where hunting and fishing are the two big sports, and lots of people that are sensitive to feminine views don't hunt and don't fish. I do both, but I still feel a gender problem here. Additionally, in the year 2012, Hispanics will be the largest minority in the United States. We don't have a lot of Hispanics here. And one of the ways I'm trying to help teacher educators have some direct experiences with minorities is the use of electronic mail and hitching them up with other student teachers around the country and around the world. At least they can talk with people that are of different culture, and with other teachers that are dealing with students of different culture. If we can't have direct experience, we can have indirect experience. I guess that's the next best thing. But again, I think it's where Eau Claire is located in the world. We're not saying, don't come here. That's not our problem. But there are some significant problems here in terms of genderism and racism.
Scott, maybe I'd ask you, just in a general sense, and it may be that I'm even thinking of Eau Claire in particular, but American society in general. Was all the activism of the previous 20 years, did it just kind of come to nothing, or has it come to something on a campus but not off campus?
Well, there's been a lot of, in the last few years, there's been an awful lot said about freedom of speech and freedom of expression in the arts, and I think there's been a lot of arts organizations that have battered that one around incessantly, really, over the NEA funding, Mapplethorpe exhibit, and so on. Unfortunately, I think a lot of that has kind of tended to reflect what I believe is really a major issue. I think the rioting and so much of the attitudes that we see is not just a matter of respecting differences, but I think It's a general kind of social paradigm that we operate under. That's one that kind of informs the way that we interact with each other, the kinds of respect we have for our environment, the respect we have for each other, whether it's gender or whether it's height differences or athletic ability or scholarly abilities. I mean, there's so many ways that we tend to break down and compartmentalize differences in our culture that we tend to separate them, I believe, separate them out for analysis to such a degree that we lose sight of what it is that's informing all of these beliefs, and whether or not the belief system itself is really where our concerns need to lie. If we can justify much of the damage that we're doing to the environment, much of the loss of life through a variety of different wars, if we can justify that and continue to justify that on a active basis, then I think we've got a real problem as a people. I think the concern I see is we're doing the same thing to each other that we've been doing to our environment for the last 200 years. And it's a you want to call it a masculine, or want to identify it in one sort of way, a kind of controlling attitude, then I would see that. And I think it's been very prevalent in the arts. Whenever anyone raises that issue, all of a sudden groups get very angry, and when it becomes an issue of expression, we talk about it more as an individual and not as our responsibility as a society or our responsibility to inform other people. It seems to indicate that those freedoms allow us to do whatever we want for whatever reason, as long as it's something we can justify. A good example is the sculpture in New York that was taken down. The sculptor was furious. $30 million lawsuit against the federal government. The people hated it. They clearly said, we don't like this. This is inhuman, it's cold, it's insensitive, it's ugly, we want it removed. This is where we have lunch at every, the artist said, I don't really care, and went ahead and did it anyway. I think that has been an attitude that's kind of informed our actions over the years to our people, to the Native American, to the Black Hispanic culture, to ourselves, and I think to a detriment to everyone. And until we find some way of looking at that paradigm or those behaviors and finding some way to reevaluate that, I don't see much hope for it changing in the near future. And I think what we've seen from the 60s on is a lot of protest, a lot of discussion, a lot of hopes built upon these different and unique areas, but we haven't really dealt with the whole problem. And I think it'll continue until until, as a biologist friend of mine says, we have the body to look at. That is the corpse. It has to die before we can agree to what killed it. In other words, up until then, it's all theory and discussion, and you're going to have debate and arguing back and forth. So.
Ron,
can I make a comment on that?
Yes, please.
Well, I think one of the things that happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s was that the values that you're talking about, the need to, those things were taking place, those discussions were taking place largely outside the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But they were taking place, and they were having an impact in changing society. One of the problems that we have, and I hope we are attempting to address as we, during the next few years, as we relook at the whole baccalaureate degree, we redefine the baccalaureate degree, is a way to get the discussion of these kinds of issues back into the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
The whole concern about what happens on Wall Street when you get people in the business world who aren't concerned about the question of ethics. The whole question of values and the role of a discussion of values is a very important thing, I think, at the university, not just the university, but in education. And is one of these kinds of issues which is so easy to just push away as you do with more mundane kinds of things on a day-to-day kind of basis. I think that has been one of the failures of American education, at least in my own lifetime. Most of the exciting things that I recall that are related to questions of value took place outside the classroom. They were important issues, important discussions, but they were outside the classroom. They weren't part of the classroom.
They're not in the political arena either.
Yeah, and that certainly is true today.
That's
and I think that's a real problem with American society, a weakness in our educational system, a weakness in our political system, And I think you hit a very important point.
Is there a way to teach values, or teach about values somehow without treading on toes?
We don't want to teach. We don't want
No,
to
we
teach
don't
what
teach values.
right and wrong values are. But what we want to do is to raise questions that will lead students to perceive. And teaching history, talking about the dropping of the bomb at Hiroshima. In education, there are ways to bring up certain kinds of themes and to get students to wrestle with these issues. Not that there is a right or a wrong answer,
could raise
but
the
to
issue.
get students to think critically, to raise these kinds of concerns. And that is one of the problems in Wisconsin today. You mentioned hunting and fishing. In Wisconsin today, we have this issue of Indian treaty rights. Where in the public school system of Wisconsin in the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 decades have these issues been raised? Have these issues been discussed? Have the cultural differences between Indian and non-Indian in terms of hunting and fishing been discussed? You know, for Indians, hunting and fishing isn't a sport. It's subsistence. It has been traditionally, at least. And there's a difference between subsistence and sport. Where has this been discussed? It hasn't. And these can lead to value kinds of questions and concerns. And I think that's one of the important, not just the university, but that's one of the important questions in our society that we have to get back to, questions of value.
But there are some basic moral values that I think most people would agree to that are non-religious, but they, you know, like respecting other people's rights and valuing other people as people. Can that be taught, so to speak?
I don't even know as we want to teach that. There's a great paradigm shift going on now in lots of different disciplines, and we're dancing around one of them right here, and that is that the body of knowledge is no longer static, but there's a lot of people that don't believe that yet, that there is an agreed upon body of knowledge, and that should be passed down through the ages, when in fact many of us are talking about it's more important to focus on the process, to give kids the opportunities to think, no matter whether they be in kindergarten or at UW-Eau Claire, to develop a way to think about issues, to decide, and so on and so forth. I was very sharply reminded of this lately, because I think of myself as a fairly okay person, but every once in a while I say, oh, I know I'm pretty ugly, and where'd I get this? You know, I was complaining every once in a while I have to get myself out of Eau Claire to see who I am in it, and I was at a national conference funded by the graduate school and talking with one of my friends at a very nice restaurant, and I was complaining about my pay and how lousy pay I was getting, and he looked at me, he says, what are you complaining about? You're already living 10 times better than the average human being in the world. You know, and I was angry at first because, gee whiz, you know, I worked hard, but I'm a baby boomer, and I was born at a time when schools told me that, boy, you're going to do better than your parents, and you're going to work hard, and if you work hard and live a clean life, you're going to do just fine. But we're at an ending point there that's no longer going to be true, and it's been no longer true, never been true for many people. And as a literacy person, boy, I'm nasty to be, you know, to have thought that, and my reality's been shaken recently, you know, and those are the kinds of things that we need to be talking about in college classrooms. Because I think our students right here at UW-Eau Claire still are very much in that work ethic. It's the Horatio Alger story all over again right here in Wisconsin. Work hard, lead a clean life, you're going to do better than your folks. And it just ain't so anymore. That system's bankrupt.
Chris, I'd like to ask you, in the classes that you've attended, do you feel that these kind of issues do get raised? Is it considered acceptable in a class to have discussions? And the other thing that I was interested in, that's kind of along the same lines, is do you think there's a political agenda, so to speak, in your classes? Is there an unwritten a political point of view? And I use political in a very broad sense, but I've heard, I didn't think there was, but I've heard to a certain extent that there may be. What have you found about the openness of your classes?
Oh, in psychology, you find openness, and I call it being reasonable. I think our discipline is, as an adult student, what I see in being raised in a different culture, where we were encouraged to seek our knowledge rather than handed the knowledge, which is still here more that we are led to the knowledge. What I miss is, but maybe this is because I'm an adult student, I take it a little bit more seriously. I'm not doing school, I want to learn. Some professors, the agenda seems to be more important to keep in tune with that and do everything on it, the syllabus, rather than a side issue which would take time, but it may take time away from the syllabus. So as an adult, I think, who is pushing this poor fellow? He must be answering, or she must be answering to somebody, maybe Tanya, I don't know. So I was hold judgment for that, but I come out of a class after a semester, and it is not quite, I have not quite reached what I wanted to reach, although part of it is up to me as a student to get more and to go where I want to. Political, in some classes, I don't know how I should answer that. In some classes, you mean?
I'm wondering, do you feel that in some classes, either the students or the professor has a certain way of looking at things and is going to make sure that everybody comes out thinking the same way, or is it an open discussion?
Well, it depends on the content, what they teach. You know, some of them it's only lecture, and we are told this is my opinion, and that makes me think of a courtroom when the lawyer says to these people, now strike this, but this is strike it off the record, but it's been said. And I always think, this is my opinion, it will lodge in the minds, and I wonder what some people do with it, including myself. But on the other hand, I'm amazed as how careful some faculty is not to, and they're doing a good job. Of course it's there. And we receive it like that too. We have our own bias too and our own thinking. But in general, I have not encountered that in 4 years too badly at all.
Any other comments on that matter?
Talking about politically correct?
Yeah.
I can add something because you're saying the tenure stuff, and I'm pre-tenure, and I often will say, well, I have to be careful what I say because I don't have tenure yet, but it really doesn't stop me from saying what I think. Maybe I'll use different vocabulary, politically correct vocabulary, polysyllabics instead of four-letter words. But I think that there is a power structure. There are rules to be paid attention to. I think it works for students and faculty. I always start my classes in the fall. I'm Sue McIntyre. Call me whatever you will. And invariably, the undergraduates will be the Dr. McIntyre, and the graduate students, the older students will, it'll be Sue, and whatever works. Because I think our students are also into that power structure. On the electronic mail, for example, at the onset of a semester, the email will always start Dr. McIntyre, and by the end of the semester, it's very, very seldom is there even a salutation, just say S or something, and they say, love, Eric, or, I mean, the relationship really, really changes through the semester. But
Ron, did you have anything to add?
I was going to say, I'm speaking now as a teacher, someone who teaches a class, and at least in my own experience from talking to the undergraduate students that I have at the class is a large class. We have about 125 students in American Indian history, so a lot of students. But I get the impression from the students that I've talked with that that's not really a problem, that students don't have difficulty speaking their mind. They don't feel constrained by that. I don't perceive that as a problem on this campus. I can tell you that I have been places in my career where that has been a problem. I remember the first time that I had to sign a statement as a grad assistant. I had to sign that a loyalty oath to the United States of America.
oh my God.
No, and I mean that wasn't that long ago. I'm not that ancient, but I don't think our students. My impression is I don't think our students feel that way. The grad students that I have exit interviews with as they finish their degrees and feel that they can talk about anything once they pass their comprehensive exam. They'll tell you anything you want to know about anybody. Certainly, I don't think they have not expressed that. There have been things that they have expressed and concerns that they have expressed, but I don't think that has been a problem. That's my perspective.
Scott, I wonder. Go ahead.
I don't think that's a problem on this campus. I have other problems, but I don't think that's one.
Scott, do you feel that faculty can express their opinions and present them as opinions to their students, and the students can respond or not as they see fit?
Well, I think there's yeah, to some extent. I mean, there's always a problem depending on the kind of pedagogy that you use in a classroom. I think this university will not be any different than any other university. You'll see a wide range of approaches. Some faculty will take complete ownership of the information and will not maybe take a wide range of different views on a subject. I found, though, that students here are very interested in having that kind of approach where maybe you play the devil's advocate. I've done it deliberately, knowing that they love Thelma and Louise and I hated the film, and I told them exactly why I hated the film. They got quite angry and really loved arguing about the relative merits of that film. And I think one of those areas that we don't look at enough, and yet we question immediately, is our own popular culture. We don't discuss it. The students really don't understand it well. They buy into the popular culture. They're a part of it. They're actively involved in it. They support it. Their parents did. And yet in a discussion, sort of, just a casual discussion about certain pop culture issues, all of a sudden they become very sensitive. It's something that they are so close to, and yet it's never been addressed in any sort of in-depth way. And so I find students really enjoy that. That's something that they can bring into the classroom, that they feel they have a sense of understanding about. And yet it's also maybe a great cause of a lot of our problems, is that we really don't understand how it operates, and we don't really understand the motives behind it, and the students don't either.
One of the comments, you were addressing some questions before directly to a non-traditional student and asking how her perceptions are. I'll make a comment about a professor in terms of having non-traditional students in a class. A class of 125 students is a very difficult class to hold a discussion in, but I can only teach one section of a class because I'm a full-time administrator. So I try to get discussion going in a class like that, even though it's an extremely large class. One of the benefits of having large numbers of non-traditional students in that class, and also up until recently, up until recently having a large number of auditors, senior citizens who are auditors, that has changed, unfortunately, because of changes in statewide policies, which no longer encourage that. But having non-traditional students and having senior auditors in the class, oftentimes they're the first people to respond. And they will make comments and statements oftentimes based on maybe not direct experience with the topic we're talking about, but a lifetime of experiences and related topics. And that sometimes will encourage the undergraduates, the younger undergraduates, because they are undergraduates too, to make comments and speak up. And as an instructor, having non-traditional students in a class has been very important to get these kinds of discussions going, because I've been in a lot of classes where you have all traditional students who you ask a question and they don't have an experiential base to base it on. They don't want to make a comment, or they're embarrassed about making a comment. Right. They don't want their peers to think they're weird or something, so that they're going to hold back. But a non-traditional student will just blurt something out, will say something, will say what's on their mind. And that will oftentimes give enough courage to the other students to, so I think that's really been a good experience.
One thing I want to make sure we talk about before we run out of time, and that is futures of education. I want to just hear some thoughts on if you could do anything that you wanted with the structure of the school system here, or if you wanted to address secondary and elementary too, but if you could just start fresh and design something based on all these years of experience that have gone before, the first 75 years on this campus, for example, what could be done differently that could be innovative? Either the relationship of the faculty and the students, or the structure of the classes, go off campus or sit out on the lawn, or have all internships or all co-ops. What are some of the ideas, and also throw in technology if this is a way to go? Anybody can chime in.
Well, I'll make one comment. I think one of the most innovative things we could do in terms of the educational system, both here and in every college campus and university, is to somehow break down those barriers that are created artificially by departmental structures. There are certain advantages and reasons for having departments as units. But one of the things is the most exciting things that go on in the world, of course, are not neatly divided that way. And to get interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary kinds of things going In my own career as a college professor, the most exciting, and as a student before that, the most exciting things were in those multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary kinds of approaches. And one of the things I'd like to see more of at Eau Claire is more work in that direction.
How can we achieve that? You hear about the credit hour problem.
I think we're already starting to do some things in these directions. We've come up with some innovative ways of encouraging new curricular designs this last year. We've provided some incentives for faculty to do this. I think we have to be careful with non-tenured faculty to make sure that when they experiment and do things this way, that's valued and that they don't get locked in a situation where peers in their department who are evaluating them may not value these kinds of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary things. I think we have to protect them in that sense. I think we have to create a milieu which is conducive to that, and I think we are beginning to do that, but we are certainly only at a beginning stage of doing that. But I do really believe that the most exciting kinds of things in a classroom occur when you get ideas, people from different disciplines together, working together. In my own career...
Like this panel, for example.
In my own career, the most exciting things have happened to me by taking anthropology, sociology, bringing them into my discipline, literature, bringing them into my discipline, which is history. And I think that's true for almost everybody. I think it's true, students and faculty.
I want to concur with that, too. We've got to get out of our buildings and talk to one another more. And pace of life here really kind of limits that. But in the last couple of years, a couple of things that I've gotten involved in terms of interdisciplinary activity, which at least is talked about as being valued. I am waiting to see if in fact it is when I go up for review. But you know, an astronomy professor and I have now, he's watched me teach, I've watched his teach, and we've talked about styles and talked about how to use space, and so we've shared some notions across disciplines, you know, hard science and soft science, and you know, and how delivery is different. Another instance, I'm working with a chemistry professor who's experimenting with using cooperative learning in his laboratories, and that's been useful. Another thing that I can think of is the use of electronic mail, where anybody and everybody can talk to one another, no matter whether you're short, tall, or a freshman or a senior person or whatever. You asked, Larry, what we would do in terms of changing. I would throw out all the podiums and lecterns out of the School of Education. I think that would make an immense difference. We've got to get the lectern out of the teaching model. So we're not in the delivery mode anymore. That doesn't work. So we've got to get more interaction going, where students talk more than 50% of the time.
Good idea. Who else?
Scott? The whole idea of getting students involved more, and one of the words that you hear, there's all kinds of ways of doing this, but student management teams, or that's a concept that's used at some places where you get students involved in what is going on in the actual designing of classes and the running of classes. But I think the collaborative research efforts that are going on at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire in a lot of disciplines, not just in the sciences, but in a lot of disciplines, we need to have more funding for these kinds of things and more time for faculty. If there are two needs out there that need to be addressed, that the state board of regents, the state legislators, the university administrators need to listen to, is they need to provide resources not only for the student kinds of things that we need, but we need faculty development, we need faculty time. We need to provide the kind of resource base so that the faculty can go to the workshops that Sue talked about, the conferences that Sue talked about, that they can have opportunities to develop new skills, but that also can have time to just stop, think, read, immerse themselves in their discipline, if it's art, music, history, whatever, and spend that time with the students. The most rewarding experiences that I have at UW-Eau Claire, I teach two classes. One's a very, very large class, and one is a very, very small class. I rotate semesters. The small class is a graduate seminar. The sheer size of that class, it doesn't have to be graduate, but the sheer size of that class makes it a joy. The face-to-face contact, the back and forth. That's the model at Eau Claire, the faculty-student collaborative. We need to provide the tools, the resources, the dollars that will make that possible for our faculty, and the time to make that possible for the faculty.
Chris?
Just a comment. not educated one like yours, but student one. No, I don't mean that mean. No. But what I have, no, I don't know about your end, but we have beautiful theater productions, music productions, and in 4 years, the classes I have been, students don't have time or don't know. How could we bring them together? Because for some people that may be a place to learn the appreciation of it. Theater is wonderful, takes you out, it's just great, and we have it all here at a reasonable price.
And if they can't partake
So,
of it and
yeah,
learn to value that
yes.
here, the chances are they're not going to value that when they get out
Exactly.
in quote-unquote the real world.
All right, that's,
Yeah.
thank
So,
you.
yeah.
Exactly what I meant.
That's a
Thanks.
problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem they bring to school. So I think that's a problem they bring from their backgrounds and their high school education, and they've already shut much of that out of the way as uninteresting, because they will find the time to go downtown and will find the time to go to Minneapolis for Saturday night to see a concert, and they will find the time to go to Madison. I've talked to the students, and they're very active, and they do have a way of organizing their time. I think it's a problem that goes back to whether or not those were experiences that they valued as a child, whether they prefer watching MTV to going to a play,
Sure.
whether they see the value in art, and in a sense we're in a situation a lot of times commenting on interests and deficiencies that students bring into the college environment as if we can resolve all of those problems. And the fine arts faculty are probably the first to stand up and rattle those sabers. But the problem really, I think, is one that is very difficult. It's one that starts long before they come to college.
And I agree with you, but one of the challenges that we face is realizing that is find ways to incorporate these experiences in. And for example, and I confess I haven't done as much of it lately as I did when I was full-time teaching, but I did find ways when I was full-time teaching to incorporate appreciation for film into what I was teaching, traditional American history. We need to find more ways of doing that, to be a little bit more innovative in our approach, and not to be fearful that something might not work, that we might try something, it might not work, we might want to do something again. We have to be careful about those famous yellow lecture notes, the lecterns you talk about.
That's right.
We need to take a little bit more chances and to try some things and to be a little bit more innovative. But we've got to get students to be involved in these things. We may not be able to mold them or force them to do all these things, but we need to try at least, because there's 4 years here and there's opportunities here, as you indicate, that are tremendous.
That's right.
And not to take advantage of that, or at least to try to figure out a way to bring that into the pedagogical experience, is a failure on our part, just as much as a failure on their part, I think.
We're just about out of time. Some people have to get to meetings, but I did want to conclude with the whole idea of this as being a video time capsule. If you could just make one short statement to somebody watching this tape in 2050, let's say in the middle of the 21st century, what message would you send to them, either about what we have that we shouldn't lose, what you hope will happen between now and then, or you might want to warn them about something? What would you say to somebody watching this tape in 2050?
I imagine that knowledge has so exploded by then, and I think that's wonderful. But don't forget the humanness, the interconnection, caring for one another. We are still individuals.
Good. Sue?
Look at the sky. See the green up there? I hope it's still there in 2050.
Scott?
I would echo both of those comments. There are certain things that might improve the amounts of information, the way it's communicated, but at least until we find a way to be able to really make some real clear understandings about what that information means and how it impacts on us and the way we interact with ourselves and our community and our environment. I hope they've learned lessons from us and have improved upon that and found ways to change the directions that we seem to be headed in.
Good. Ron?
When I interviewed for my job, Dean of Graduate School job here in 1983, I called the only person that I knew in Wisconsin and asked him what he knew about UW-Eau Claire, and he told me two things. And I think both of those two things are true, and I hope they will be true then. One thing he said was the UW-Eau Claire is the jewel in the crown of the UW system. And the second thing he says, UW-Eau Claire is the campus that cares in the UW system. And I believe those two things when I came here. I still believe them, and I hope those two things will still be true.
I want to thank all of you, Chris, Sue, Scott, and Ron, for participating in this. And this concludes our 4th video time capsule in commemorating the 75th anniversary of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you for making it so easy.
Good.